Entertaining guests can be fun and rewarding, but if you're not prepared, it can also be really draining and stressful. Now, in my previous experience of catering for professional events and like big events in restaurants and stuff like that, things can go one of two ways. You're either super prepared and super organized and things go smoothly and well. On the other hand, if you are not prepared and you're not organized, things can become kind of chaotic really soon. So in this video, I'm going to give you guys a series of tips to make sure that your next event is completely stress-free and that you're having an amazing time serving amazing food with happy guests. Let's jump straight into it. Our very first step is to properly plan out the menu. But before we can do this, there's one pre-step. As you're inviting your guests, as you're finding out who's going to be coming to this event that you're throwing, it is very important to find out if you have any dietary requirements. If somebody is gluten intolerant, that very much dictates how you're going to be cooking inside the kitchen. If somebody is a vegan and you don't know about it and you find out at the last minute, the beef Wellington that you put a bunch of time and effort into is now kind of useless. So find out dietary requirements and then jump into planning your menu. Now, if this is going to be like a big event like Christmas or Easter or something like that, and you want to have like a nice impressive meal, I would structure my menu like this. You don't need to hit all of these, but at least hit most of them. So I'd start off with like snacks and nibbles. I would move into a starter. Then within the main course, typically, especially for like holiday gatherings, I would go a main protein, maybe a vegetarian protein if I have vegetarians, a starch side dish, a vegetable side dish, some sort of salad side dish typically. A sauce to go with your main protein is an option, unless it's like a braised meat that's cooked in sauce already, then you don't really need an extra sauce. Following that, I'll have a little dessert and then some sort of like little chocolates and things to enjoy with like coffees and cocktails and that sort of thing. Again, if this is just like a smaller gathering, you can make a main course and a dessert and maybe have like a couple nibbles before and after. That's totally fine. You do not need to hit all these things. But if you're trying to make like this impressive holiday gathering, it's nice to have this like little bit of structure. Next step, once you have the overall structure and you've filled it in with all of your little recipes, you know what side dishes you're making, what main course you're making, everything is confirmed, then I think it is super important to make a nice detailed shopping list. Write down everything that you think you'll need for these recipes, check what you actually have in stock inside of your kitchen and make sure it's not expired. In my list, I like to separate them into little categories, so things like my protein and a lot of my veg and stuff like that, I'll get closer to the date, but if I'm doing a supermarket order, let's say weeks in advance, and I need canned beans, for example, that stuff has a really long shelf life, so feel free to buy that in advance so you know that you're going to have it. What I typically like to do is fill these things in like a spreadsheet, write the category of ingredients and maybe where I'm getting that ingredient from. Let's say I'll get my protein from the butcher, I'll get my veg from my local veg guy, that sort of thing. And what I can actually order online, especially since I have this thing written out in front of me, I'll just order online and get it done and out of the way. The link's going to be in the description if you want to check out that spreadsheet. It's going to be simple, but maybe you'll find it useful. Once we get to the point where I know what ingredients I'm getting and where they're coming from, I will move on to writing down my prep list. And now the most important things here aren't just your prep list on the day of like what you're going to be cooking, but I love to prepare as much stuff as possible in advance. This is what's going to remove a ton of stress on the actual day of the event, and some things actually get better with time. So let's say imagine I'm serving like a curry. Preparing it the day before, 2 days before, that flavor is really going to develop and like become just a better product to serve. Whereas if I'm making a salad, there's no way I'm like dressing a salad and chopping fresh apples like a day or two before. I'll leave another spreadsheet inside of the description, which will help you sort of like plan out day by day. But the most important step here is that 2 to 3 days before, you're already starting to think about the stuff that can be cooked in advance. I'll leave some examples in the description below, but everything that does not need to be cooked on the day and will still be of good quality or even better quality when cooked in advance, cook it in advance. It's going to save you a ton of time, a ton of effort, and you can put absolute focus in the things that need to be cooked fresh, like your main beef roast. You definitely want to cook that on the day, right? You don't want to be reheating that. So prep as much in advance without degrading the quality of the overall thing. Meal. Whilst you're working on your prep list, there's another 2 tips that I can insert in here. Number 1, if you're seeing this prep list is enormous and you're not going to manage, feel free to delegate to some people. If you're inviting like 12 people over and you want to do all of the cooking yourself, amazing, like kudos to you, but that can be a little much if you're trying to do like this really expansive menu. So it's not the worst thing in the world to ask like a close friend of yours who's into cocktails and stuff. Maybe they can make like a nice drink whilst they're over here. Maybe you have a best friend who's obsessed with potatoes and they can bring in like their family recipe of mash, stuff like that. It doesn't need to be this like full potluck, but it's not the worst thing in the world to ask for a little bit of help. You are inviting people over to your house or to your event space. it's okay. A lot of people will be more than happy to sort of contribute to the overall experience. Okay, you've prepped what you're doing on the days leading up to the event, you have delegated what you need to. Next, let's focus on the day of the event. And this needs to be planned out really, really well. I would start at a very high level with just your overview of things that need to get done in the order that they need to get done. But I would also definitely think about the oven and what needs to be going into the oven. Let's say you have this big, beautiful roast turkey, but you're also doing roast potatoes. You need to manage that time effectively. So maybe whilst the turkey is resting, you can finish roasting the potatoes, but you might need to half cook them from before. Start thinking about these things so that you're not set up on the day and you're like, shoot, I need 5 pots and pans going on the stove, but there just aren't enough space or pots and pans to do that sort of cooking. Now, I'm a chef, so I'm always obsessed with the back of house, but you do need to think about your front of house as well. And again, you can either delegate that to your partner if you're inviting people over together, but if you're taking that upon yourself, make sure you have enough plates, you have enough cutlery, you know what cutlery you need for each course. If anything needs to be washed in between courses because you don't have enough forks or something like that, make sure you get onto these little details so that there are less surprises on the day. And you can focus less about stressing and more about having a drink with some friends and enjoying some food. Okay, so you've done all your prep, it's the day of the event, things are going great, you're cooking, you're almost done, you're almost there, dinner is going to be fabulous. Oh no, a group of guests have shown up, and now suddenly you are chatting, you're pouring drinks, you're making sure everybody's getting comfortable, and you're neglecting everything that needs to be done in the kitchen. And things are going to start slowing down. What I would recommend to avoid this and to be able to still continue cooking and make sure that the food is where it needs to be and that everything is going to be on time, but you don't want your guests to be just like wondering what they need to do. Set up things like a beverage station so they can help themselves to their own cocktails. Have a few nibbles already set out so they're not like hungry for food and like grow impatient for dinner. Again, this isn't like a restaurant where they're super hungry and they're going to be like aggressively waiting for food and like being super demanding, but you want them to have drinks available, you want them to have snacks available. If you can delegate your partner or one of your more sociable friends to act as like a host and open the door for people to let them in and stuff like that, taking off as much weight off your shoulders so that you can focus on the cooking or focus on the parts that you're good at. Like maybe you're good at everything and you're this amazing multitasking host. I am not that person. My attention span is a little fixed and I'm always like super obsessed with the food, but that's just me. Ooh, before I forget, something which I should have mentioned when you were designing your menu and developing it and picking out your shopping list, always plan to have slightly more food than you need at bare minimum. If you're not sure what slightly more food than you need looks like, I would Google recipes. So let's say Google mashed potato recipe, use a trusted website, something like Serious Eats is a favorite of mine, and just see how many potatoes they use to serve for how many people. And then over time, you'll gain an understanding of how much your guests eat versus how much food you prepare. Having said that, moving on to our next tip, you had an amazing meal, you served so much food, everybody is full, there's still so much food left over. Make sure you have some sort of plan in mind for like all of these leftovers. So either you're enjoying these leftovers for the next couple of days and then everything else just goes into your freezer, which is fine. So either ask your guests to bring in their own Tupperware so they can take some of the stuff home, or have like disposable but compostable and good quality like takeout boxes so they can like take the stuff with them. And lastly, and I feel like this is a piece of advice which I should take myself, because working as a restaurant chef, everything is like super high pressure and meals are super important and everything must be a super high standard, but I sort of forget that if I'm hosting like family or friends, there isn't as much of that pressure. Usually people are super happy that you're cooking for them, that you're welcoming them into their house. Things don't always need to be absolutely perfect. You don't need to put so much stress on yourself, so much pressure on yourself. Some of the best meals I've had have had the biggest cock-ups happen to them and things go wrong, and they just end up being a story that you would talk about. Not that yours is gonna go wrong. I have a feel you're gonna have an amazing Christmas, especially after you follow all these tips. But yeah, just remember to relax, have a good time, and spend time with your guests. The food is important, but the most important part is the experience and the memories that you make and all that beautiful, corny stuff. I hope you found this useful. I'm going to be putting links in the description with a couple spreadsheets and resources which you guys can use to like plan your own little meals, whether it's for Christmas or like any other holiday. So yeah, I hope you found this video useful. I hope you find these spreadsheets useful, and I hope you have a happy holiday and a wonderful little event, whatever you're throwing. Bye.